Jimmie Harold attended the 2007 Society of Air Force Nurses 20th Anniversary Reunion, honoring the World War II flight nurses. As a flight nurse, we asked her to take a few minutes away from the events and festivities to tell a few of her stories from those exciting days 65 years ago.
Well, I've always wanted to be a nurse, and the war broke out in 41, and I entered the military in 43.
Do you remember what the motivating factor was, whether it was that other nurses were doing it, whether it was Pearl Harbor or...
Well, I was young, and I wanted to do something other than stand behind an operating room table all the time, so I joined the service.
Yeah. And had you been trained already as a nurse before you went
Yes,
in?
I was.
Okay. Where did you do your training at?
At Our Lady of the Lake Hospital in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
How do you think that prepared you for the military, that training you had there?
I don't know how to answer that. I had excellent nursing training, and you learn the rest of it as you go along.
Well, let's walk back then to where did you do your basic training at?
San Antonio.
When you got to San Antonio, as a young girl, what was it like? What did you think it was going to be like? How did it turn out to be?
Well, it was very interesting and very hard.
Yeah.
The packs that you had to buy to wear when you were hiking was not very light.
Did you ever ask yourself or any of the other nurses, look, they want us to be nurses. Why do they have us walking around with packs? And
well, yes, but I can see why they did it. At the time, I couldn't see it, but now I do.
What was the morale like among the other women, young ladies that you were there with?
Very, very high.
Tell us a little bit about that. What were you guys thinking at the time?
When were we going overseas? We could hardly wait.
Did it matter to you if you went to the Pacific or the European theater?
No, it did not.
And did you know people who were already in the military? In other words, any relatives or friends who had already gone into the military?
No, I did not.
Yeah.
Your brother was.
Well, my brother was in the Army, and he was the only one that I knew of my family or friends that were in the military.
Are there any funny or cute stories or just interesting stories, things that you remember about that basic training that you think folks ought to know about?
All I can tell you, it was hot, H-O-T. And food was different, regimentation, which I wasn't used to.
Yeah.
So it took a little bit of ingenuity and acceptance of the regulations, and whatever you had to do, you did it. And you didn't ask questions.
Didn't ask questions. They had a fashion show here the other evening, and I was telling Christy Marie, it was amazing. Do you remember the first time you put your uniform on?
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about that.
I was in San Antonio, and at that point in time, we had to buy our Class A uniforms. And there was a shop in San Antonio called Sugarman's. And remember, I was a second lieutenant. We didn't make much money then, and I had to buy a Class A uniform and a formal dress uniform. And I didn't have much money, so I bought it on time, and I had to pay for it.
Wow.
It took me a while, but I got it done.
So you had to buy your own uniform?
Yes, we did. And we still do.
Do you?
I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't know that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, they did when I retired in 1970. We bought our own uniform. I don't know what it is now.
Yeah. When you put that uniform on for the first time, do you remember how you felt?
Very, very proud to be able to wear it. Extremely so.
Where did you go into, I wouldn't say combat, but where did you go into active duty where you were serving at?
I went to Europe.
Okay. Tell me about a typical day in Europe for you, Jimmy, when you were back there in 1942, 43?
Well, and you talking about Europe or the U.S.?
In Europe? No. When you were over there serving,
Oh,
I mean,
well-
did they have you in Quonset huts?
No.
Kind of walk me through what a normal day would be like.
Well, when we got off of the ship at Calais, France, and we were put on 2-ton trucks, and we were taken to Nancy, France, and that's where our hospital was going to be assigned. And the building that the hospital finally settled in was formerly used by the Germans, and the facility prior to the war was a boys' academy. And so the Germans occupied it, and it was destroyed, the plumbing and feces all over everything, and slogans and slurs painted on the wall. So the Americans had to clean it up. But I think, if I remember correctly, the Americans hired the French, the men who were not in the service, the older men, and they came in and cleaned it up and painted it and this, that, and the other, so it could be inhabited by us. As far as the staff was concerned, we were staffed in a dormitory where the students used to live. And there were, I think, 12 to a big auditorium, and there were 12 to 20 nurses in there, and we had cots. And our footlocker was at our foot of the bed. And there was no place to hang clothes, but you improvise. Most of my career was being improvising. If you didn't have it, you improvised.
Now, you said you didn't spend the war standing beside an operating table. Did you end up standing beside an operating table, or did you help with transportation? What type of nursing did you do?
Operating room. I was in a field hospital, which you so-called MASH units now. And we were on the front line, and it didn't take us very long to get the patients that were injured backwards to go to larger facilities. We stabilized them and did what we could. Triage, in other words.
Exactly.
And the ambulances and stuff. In those days, we didn't have choppers to do.
What types of injuries did you guys see?
Oh, lots of gunshot.
Yeah.
Lots of gunshot. Fractures, brain. You had a variety of them. And we, as I said, we gave them first aid, we stabilized them. If they had a broken leg, we put splint on them so they could be transported to the rear.
For a young girl, had you seen that type of trauma injuries like that when you were still down in Louisiana? Or?
Absolutely not.
Yeah. What's it like? I mean, emotionally, what's it like to
Very-
see the
very-
first up, the reality of war?
It was very emotional, but it was very satisfying to be able to help them. And we saw some rough wounds.
How do you help them? Is it all medical, or is there a...
Oh, both. It was both. For instance, the men was on the front line, and they hadn't shaved in 7 to 8 or 10 days or something. Of course, they had beard. And when we would get them in the triage, and when we finally, and there are many, many teams of triage, and I was assigned a team. There were one nurse, one anesthesiologist, 3 corpsmen, and a couple of doctors, and that consisted of a team. And when they came to our table, which was housed in a tent, they'd come in. They would beard and mud and dirty and everything. So we had to clean them up before we could do anything. And once they were anesthetized, one of us, or somebody on the team, got a razor and shaved their face so they looked presentable. And besides, you had to shave them if they had a cranial wound. Wherever the wound was, you had to shave the area. But we did all of that. And I think, to my knowledge, they still do it. I think they did it in the Korean War, Vietnam too.
How important do you think that caring, that kindness, that comforting is to soldiers like that?
For the soldiers or me?
Well, for both. That's a good question, for both.
Well, it was very satisfying for me, and I remember one young man. He couldn't have been more than 19. Was on the table, and he looked at me and he said, "Thank you, nurse. It's so good to see an American woman," and that touched me. Really did.
How important is it to give these guys hope, do you think? Were you able to do that, or are they just in so much shock early on?
Well, they were too much in shock, and they were in horrible pain, so you sedated them in order to do what you had to do. And then once they were moved to the rear, I never saw them again. You know, they go to whichever hospital they were assigned to.
What's the most, I've got a couple of notes here that they wanted me to make sure I asked some questions on, but what's your fondest memory? When you look back on World War II and that era, whether it was here in the U.S. or whether it was overseas, Jimmie, what would be your fondest memory of that time?
Well, are you speaking professionally or socially or what?
All of it. I mean, if there was a romantic thing socially that was fun, then tell me about that. If there was just a thing professionally, then tell me that as well.
Well, we had leave. There were 4 girls that ran around together. They'd call us the Unholy Four. And we were dating men, flyers. They were fighter pilots, and they were stationed in Stuttgart, Germany, and in France. So we hitched a ride in a 2-ton truck to Stuttgart, and they knew we were coming. So there's no hotel, no nothing there. So they went into German homes and made arrangements for the 4 of us to be housed in these German homes. You know, there were 2 in one place and 2 in the other, or wherever. And there was no officers club, no nothing. I think they had a room that was converted into a little sitting room or something. And the mess hall. There was no officers club, so you ate in the mess hall. But sleeping in a German home, I had never slept on a feather bed, and they had feather beds, and you sunk in them. And it was quite an experience. And this German family that I stayed with, of course, they didn't speak English, and I didn't speak German, but somehow or other we communicated, and they fed me breakfast. You know, it was tea and toast or something like that, because they didn't have any food themselves.
That's right.
But we got there on the 2-ton truck, but now we had to get back to Nancy. So the guys put us on a train to go back to Nancy. And we were supposed to be on duty the following day or that afternoon or the evening or something. Well, the train broke down and the tracks were upheaval, and so we finally made it. And got out the train station, and we knew we were late. We were AWOL. So there was a little florist there, and they had one purple orchid. We didn't have much money, but we bought that orchid. I think we paid $7 for it. Between the 4 of us, we had enough money to pay for it. So, and I was the one that suggested we ought to take this to the chief nurse so she doesn't chew our behinds out. So we did. And she had left word that when the 4 of us came in, that she wanted to see us, PDQ. So we went in there and we presented this, and she says, "It's about time you got here." And with that, we gave her the orchid, and that was all she said. Get ready to go on duty. So we dashed upstairs, got in our scrubs or whatever we were wearing, and went on duty, and that was the end of it. She threatened to send us to the commander, but she never did.
You were one smart cookie.
Yeah, you know, takes a little dough.
Did you worry? Fighter pilots.
Hey, listen.
They can be a wild bunch.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. You want to tell me about it? I've interviewed some, but you probably would know much better than me.
We met them. I don't know how. Oh, they came down to Nancy and to this hotel where they had a nice bar, and that's where we met them.
Yeah.
And I don't know, one thing led to another, and every time they'd go on a mission and they knew where we were, on their way back to Stuttgart, they'd buzz the hospital. So we knew that they had returned. You can't miss a buzz on a hospital. Do I still keep now, or did I keep in touch with the pilot pilots? To a certain point. But you know, war changes everything on a daily basis, and we were all separated, and one went one place and one went the other, and this, that, and the other. However, I did keep in touch for many, many years until she died. My best friend, I met her in the latrine when we were activating a hospital, and she was from Chicago, and here I am in Louisiana, and we were in Texas. So she looked at me, and I looked at her, and I changed names and where are you from and this, that, and the other. And so we went to chow, wherever, the mess hall, wherever they fed us, in Texas, Longview, Texas. I'll never forget it. Anyway, and we were assigned to the same hospital, and we hit it off. You know, you meet friends, you want to be friends forever. Well, this was the type of relationship that we had.
Wow.
And so we were roommates throughout all of this, and when one got into trouble, the both of us got into trouble.
What, was she one of the unholy four?
Oh, yes. We were the instigators.
So you were probably number one and number two. Did you worry about these fighter pilots?
Oh, yeah. They moved on. They were forward of us, and they went from one station to the other until the war ended. And, everybody went their own way because you weren't in contact with them constantly. But I do want to say that I was in France, and then I was in a field hospital, and I went to Belgium, and the Army got a castle, gorgeous place, and that building was the nurses and the staff's quarters, and we had tents for hospital in Arlon, Belgium. And my brother was in the Army, and he was stationed in. I knew he was in Belgium, but I didn't know where. So I had worked a 12-hour shift, and I had just gotten off duty at 7:30, 8 o'clock or something, and it was laundry day. So my roommate and I were down and putting our laundry in a pillowcase, and we were taking it to laundry, to have it laundered. And the runner came up and said, "Miss Guitreau, you have a guest." And I looked at her, and she looked at me, and a guest at 8 o'clock in the morning. So we went. I came down this gorgeous curved staircase, and I got on the first landing from the top, and I looked down on the bottom, and there was my brother, whom I had not seen in 3 years. So I dropped the laundry, and we met. Of course, we both started crying, but anyway, he said, I said, "I got to go take my laundry." He says, "Well, come on, let's go to breakfast." So he had a buddy with him, and I think his commander gave him a Jeep or something to look me up. So we went around the corner of the little bistro and to have breakfast. Well, my roommate and I had breakfast, and they drank beer at 8 o'clock in the morning. So anyway, he finally decided he better have some food. So the bill came, and he looked at me, and he says, "Well, Lieutenant, do you have any money?" And it's been that way all his life. As long as he lived, Jimmy picked up the tab, no matter where we were. That's just one little instant that I remember. Well, may I back up for a minute?
You sure can.
We went over on a French ship that was converted into troop carrier, and we landed in England, Southampton, and it was in the wintertime. So you have components of a general hospital, all the staff, enlisted officers and doctors and nurses and the whole 9 yards. So we were in a staging area, and we were in tents. And England, in the wintertime, is awful with the rain and the cold. and we had galoshes. So you had to wash, it seemed like a half a mile or a mile or so to go to the latrine. And when you walked, you had your galoshes and you were up to your knees in mud. And there we had the Red Cross.
How did the English treat you?
Absolutely fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. We were invited to, when we landed on the island, we landed in Scotland. And you have to remember, we were on this troop ship, and you had to have your helmet on the whole time, and water was scarce, so you didn't wash your hair. But when we got to Scotland, and they billeted us in this hotel, and my roommate and I walked in this room that we were assigned to, and I swear, the bathtub was longer than that couch. So we filled it up, and we took turns in soaking and washing our hair. And then we went to bed on clean sheets, and it was absolutely outstanding.
Well, tell me this. When you look at the current generation of military nurses, or the future generation, what advice would you have to give them for when the going gets tough, or just to get through? Any advice from the veteran to the younger ones, I guess?
Well, you have to remember, you have orders to follow, whether it's in the 40s or right now. You still have orders, you have to abide by it. You have to do what you have to do. And you just obey it and do it the best you can.
How about camaraderie? You were talking about the young lady that you met down there in Texas. How strong was the camaraderie among women who are going through the same experience?
It was very close, very close. She was from Chicago and I was from Louisiana, and different foods and different likes and dislikes. But overall, our likes were very much alike. And we kept in touch, and I was her best, what do you call it, bridesmaid or whatever, her best lady or whatever you want to call it, when she got married. Wow. In '56. So we maintained our relationship all of our lives.
Wow. Well, tell me this, because some people, especially in those days, didn't necessarily travel too far from home. Somebody from Chicago may just stay in Chicago. Somebody from Cleveland may never get outside of Cleveland except once or twice in life. You had a chance to see a little bit of the world. Was that exciting?
Very much so.
Tell me about that.
After the war, you came back to the States and were assigned to the hospital, or you got out of the service. Well, I got out of the Army, I think it was 13 or 14 months or something. And I went back to my old hospital to work, into the operating room, and my goodness, they were paying me $100 a month. Well, I couldn't survive on that. So that's when I went back into the service, and that's when the Air Force became a separate corps from the Army. And I stayed in it for 27 years.
Wow. What was the most challenging aspect of it during World War II, of nursing, do you think? Equipment or conditions? I mean, you're in a tent.
Conditions.
Yeah.
Conditions. But you know what? You do what you have to do, and you survive.
Yeah. Well, I try to ask all of the right questions. I guess one thing that I would want to know is, would you do it again?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If I were physically able to do it, I would do it. And I encourage young women getting out of high school or college or whatever, and they don't know what to do, to join the military. It'll make them grow up. It'll make them learn discipline and obey orders and do what you're told. Because there are many, many opportunities in the military for women and men. The best thing that ever happened to me was when I met my husband, who's now deceased. But I was stationed at Hamilton Air Force Base and as a chief nurse. And by the way, I ran a couple of them that I had as a second lieutenant. I met him. He was a retired Navy captain, and we married 4 months later, and we had a happy 38 years of marriage until he died in '06.